Isle of Man's largest collection of locally produced podcasts, available for free on manxradio.com.
Okie dokie. Right. Well, let's start the chat with actually who you are and what you do. So full job titles. Go on, Adam.
Oh, I'm Adam Slevin, and I am the Director of Creative Design and Experience at Pleasure Beach Resorts.
Now,
I've had to read it off my own door, I know.
I particularly like that. So, come on now, Andy, we're in Adam's office, which means, Andy, you've got to actually...
I'm Andy Hygate, I'm the Operations Director. I can remember my own job title.
I like that.
Sorry, I've had a week.
Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you very much.
So, I don't know where we're going to start here. I mean, in terms of... Andy, I'm going to come to you because sorry, Well, Adam's had a week off, so we're pressure's off. Yeah, we're going to be.
Like he's still on holiday.
Oh, it's lovely.
I mean, Pleasure Beach for me, who's been here for many years. Since knee-high to a grasshopper. I remember pretty big one time. I was the kid who got excited by seeing concrete footings in the ground. Yeah,
that would be exciting.
Yeah, but of course it is a mix of modern rides. Your icons all the way back to your Grand Nationals and things like this. You, when it comes to maintenance, surely must be a headache.
Well, one of the good things about Pleasure Beach is that we've got a team of people that's made up of a huge mix of people, and some of those people have literally been here for 40 years. And I think, when you have that, you have a level of experience and familiarity that you just can't buy. The people, so for example, we've got 4 wooden coasters, and we have a structures team of people. It isn't necessarily the first thing you would think of for an amusement park or a theme park, but those people know those rides inside out. I mean, I know them pretty well because we ride them all the time, but they know them literally down to the support. And if you can imagine how many supports there are on a ride like the Grand National, so that, I think, having that knowledge base, and then of course it's interesting because of the nature of it, you get new people coming in with fresh ideas and all of that. So it's that sort of heady mix of people, I think, that means we're able to manage such a complex site with such a mix of, like you say, you had historic rides, but also state-of-the-art rides as well. I think that's what makes Pleasure Beach good, though. It should have that mix. It can never serve. People say it's about, well, actually, Walt Disney said it about Disneyland, didn't he? But you could say exactly that. And we say it a lot, actually. Amusement parks are not museums, and they need to always change. And that's what you mentioned footers. You can come and see them and how exciting. I'm still like that whenever we do it, or if I go to another park and they're doing so. I went to Cedar Point last year and I saw the new footers for their Top Thrill 2 adaptation of Top Thrill Dragster, and I took photos of these blocks of concrete.
we know about this, Adam, because I presume you follow Andy on Twitter as well.
Yes, I do.
Have you noticed his global... I'm amazed he's here for us today, to be honest. I mean, he does get around a bit.
He does, and there's such as his popularity and stature, of course. Yes, I do follow Andy. Andy's actually fantastic with photographs as well. They're always worth a like. Yes, no matter how many times I walk around the park, I'll sometimes see a picture from Andy and think, why didn't I notice that? Why didn't I get that picture? And you think, I bet Andy's got a picture that's tenfold better than mine.
I have the ability. I can walk up things.
Yeah. I mean, are you in this job because it's a mixture of, obviously it's your career, but also as a passion?
Of course, yeah. I think a lot of people actually in the industry are like that. I think it's something that you just... I've been obsessed with roller coasters. I was obsessed with roller coasters when I was 5 years old, and I wanted to go on the Looping Star at Margate and Dreamland, so I couldn't believe it had a loop, and anyway, ever since then, I'm just. I think if you're passionate about something, it's that cliche, isn't it? If you're passionate about something, then it's never like a day. Well, actually, we do have days at work where it feels it's work, but at the same time, I think if you're interested in something and you're then it means you love doing what you're doing. There's a lot of people at Pleasure Beach that fall into that category.
I mean, I'm sat here and I'm going to use I wouldn't say a competitor's phrase because they're not close, but Disney have their Imagineering department, which is meant to be the sort of mix between imagination and engineering. And I feel in this room, yeah. Well, this is where I come to you, Adam, is the fact that you're the man who has to come up with creative visions and driving the part forward there. Because as we said, things never stay still.
Yes.
I mean, how challenging is that for you in terms of taking something that might be existing with a lot of heritage and saying, right, okay, I'm going to honour that, and then I've got these grand visions, and if you're like me and a lot of other creatives I know, you sit there going, oh, these wonderful grand visions, and then some accountant comes along and says, well, you haven't got all the money for that. How do you balance all of this together?
I actually don't find that difficult. I find that really exciting, that part of it. And sometimes, as you say, you've got to work to a budget and within constraints, and actually quite often that forces you to come up with a solution that you hadn't thought of in the first place. So actually it takes you down a sort of slightly different road. If I might want to do something that's going to cost an absolute fortune, and I'm told I only have half of that, which is fine. It just means you look at it a different way, and then sometimes you come up with something completely different. And I think when you're designing things, you have to learn to not fall in love with a design, because it may well be that it will get trashed, or it has to be trashed, or put on hold, put in a folder and revisited at some point in the future. But it's sort of the process, I suppose, in doing it it simply isn't just me. There's a team of us, that Andy included, that look at stuff in terms of forward planning. And I have a small department made up of, actually, some of them former ride operators.
Surprised I've got any longer.
It's basically what you're saying is he poaches them.
Yeah. I see that in some ways it's annoying, but in other ways it's
career progression.
Well, no, it's a reflection of, I say that it's good. At the end of the day, we take on a lot of seasonal ride operators, and I love it when they go on to get permanent roles and get to be involved in stuff or careers out of it.
Do you see him at the end of the season just wandering around with a clipboard talking to various ride operators? Right, okay, he's good for my department. That'd be really nice.
I've never been that bold. Never. I think Andy knows, and I enter his office and it starts with Andy. I think he knows exactly what's following.
Yeah.
But it's actually great, and it's testimony to that we have good people in the rides operation departments that shine. And quite often in the winter, we use some of the operations staff in our departments, and it's a really good time to identify people who've got perhaps hidden skills or skills we didn't know about, or skills that suddenly come to the surface. And quite often you think, oh wow, they've really taken to it, and then ends up in a conversation with Andy and says, thinking this person could be a good fit at some point. But actually, we've got artists in our department now who are in the rides department maybe as long as 20 years ago, and they're still with the company. Of course, have moved across, and they've learnt their craft, sort of the artistic side of it separately, but they've got a sort of a good linchpin of understanding in the operational side of stuff. They sort of get what we could and couldn't do, and that does give you shorthand, most definitely, when you're trying to make stuff.
Is this where you would stand about, because everyone will turn, the layman will turn around and go, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, it's just another theme park.
Pleasure Beach Resort.
Oh, slap on the wrist, sorry. I can feel the marketing people already burning through the walls at me. Pleasure Beach Resort.
Loaded.
Yes. That here at the park, it could be lumped together with every other theme park, because people just consider parks with rides as theme parks, yes. A lot of them. But the difference between, say, a Universal resort in America, where there is big manufacturing companies that contract stuff too, and here you've got in-house talent, so that when you look around, there are things that are beautifully hand-painted, and these are all kind of skills that, until you actually have to try and find someone who can beautifully sign
yes.
right, you suddenly realise that actually they're skills that aren't readily available.
No, and actually we have a very talented Andy, a sign writer. Not this Andy, another Andy. There's lots of Andys.
Lots of talented Andys.
Lots of talented Andys. Correct. And that, having that ability in-house and that resource is just invaluable. And sometimes when I go and see Andy in the sign studio, it's amazing to watch him freehand this, whilst having a conversation with you, freehanding these beautiful works of art, these signs, and that is something that not many places are able to do. And we can do that here, and it's the same as you mentioned with artists. Like over this winter we've done more work, and the models and all the figures and all the little props and sets, they were all made here. We didn't go anywhere else to make them. They were all made on the site and installed here. And that's something I think most places can't do.
No.
And we're really fortunate to have that. And it means we can be quite nimble with what we're doing about the stuff. I mean, Andy and I could have a conversation today and, within a week could have actually implemented what we discussed. We sort of, there isn't any long-winded process. We can be quite quick and nimble and fluid.
You mean you haven't got the sort of 7-year Disney lag of, when they decide something, announce something, blue sky, it's made me think about it, goes to a board.
Maybe on larger projects, obviously, anything bigger. The process does take a bit longer. But with stuff we've already got, if we want to improve it, then we simply discuss it and we do it.
In terms of, I'm going to take you back now to let's talk some specifics. The nightmare period of Valhalla, and the reason I say nightmare period, of course, is there was a kind of little interruption in the world that kind of got in the way of it all.
One kind of forgets.
Yeah. Well, I did think of this the other day when we went to the Sandcastle when we first arrived, and then I was standing in queues yesterday, and you sit there going, like, the world's kind of moved on at great speed. Forgotten. But when you came to do the work on Valhalla, and I know there was a mixture we've talked about before. There's a mixture between the engineering and maintenance side of work that was done, and then the creative vision of a lot of the changes that have been done to enhance the ride. I mean, where did you start, Adam, first on that one?
So I remember I don't remember what year it was. That awful. But I can tell you it was Boxing Day, whatever the year was. As I remember, Boxing Day. I don't know why, Boxing Day is a day I always end up doing something creatively work-related. I'm not sure why it happens on Boxing Day. Generally, I start writing the panto for the next year on Boxing Day.
Andy, what does he drink on Christmas Day that leads to this?
Snowballs. Lots and lots of snowballs. Copious amounts of snowballs. And I remember sitting down on Boxing Day and putting something together, and it's dreadful. I can't remember what year did Valhalla shut? 2019. So it would have been Boxing Day 2019. Of course, and then that process takes a while because, as you mentioned, there's I always think people underestimate, even though Valhalla is physically huge, underestimate how much goes into Valhalla and how many technical elements and the amount of water and electricity, gas, etc. in that building, and it is a big old job to keep Valhalla running. It really is. It was a huge project.
I mean, you kind of skimmed over it as well, but actually, when you look at COVID as a thing, or as a thing that everyone went through and so on. But from our perspective, Valhalla aside, I'm actually just really proud that during those 2 years, for the periods that we were able to open, we were actually able to open and function an amusement park under those circumstances. It's so easy to forget now that there was a point at which everyone was supposed to be 2 meters apart. And again, you can imagine the queue for the big one with a 2 meter gap between every person.
Was it a big one?
It
was a big queue.
Down to the tower.
Thank you.
You see, it seems so bizarre now, but because the park was never obviously conceived or built in a way that was supposed to operate under those circumstances.
I don't think any of them were really.
No, and to be so I am actually really proud that we were able to open in a way which we believe to be safe and that people could still. I think people by certainly in the second year, but people really needed to escape,
100%,
and so on. And in terms of Valhalla, originally the plan was for the ride to be shut for a year, wasn't it?
Yes.
But under those circumstances, because it literally had a knock-on effect to absolutely everything. I mean, it's even things which, you could order something from Europe in the old days and it would turn up like 5 days later.
Yeah.
But post-COVID, that's just not how it works. And so for every component that you're ordering and so on, you suddenly have to add on like a 5-month lead time and stuff like that. And so, it did have massive implications.
What sort of, because the one thing I sympathise with you guys a lot in terms of running an amusement park. Is that right? Amusement park.
Doing different things to different people.
Whatever you think's right.
Yeah, so whatever I think's right.
Means to you.
Oh, crikey. Okay, well, running this park right next to the sea. And I know full well that not only next to the sea, but next to the
definitely
Irish Sea.
that.
Yes, definitely that. In terms of the detrimental effect that weather has to your infrastructure, it must be a nightmare. But for the starting point of Valhalla, which 2019, so what's that? 19 years running in the wet, constantly inside. There must have been a lot of engineering work you had to do for that.
Yes, and I don't think people won't notice those.
No, of course
they
not,
shouldn't
no.
notice those at all. But yes, the sea air here is salty. It does affect things, so it really, we deal with it, but it just means we have to be on top of stuff more than an inland park would. So yeah, in terms of Valhalla, there was a hell of a lot of steel work to do, which we did get done. No one would have seen that happening, as it all happened inside the building, and if we replace something, it probably did look exactly the same afterwards. So it's nothing to shout about. It's nothing marketable or particularly exciting, but it does give the ride longevity, which to us is exciting.
Well, it's also, let's be honest, maintenance is important. And
of course it is.
People only notice if maintenance isn't done. We won't go down that road.
Nope.
But as you say, things should be replaced like for like, and it's a very important job. And you guys must have a lot more to do because of those weather conditions and that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through that process with the big one at the moment. Well, we have been for a number of years. We've chosen to retrack the ride over.
I can attest after a ride on it yesterday. By the way, the new sections are very nice.
It's very nice.
Very nice.
Pull out from,
Yes.
from the first drive. Well, obviously because of the length of the ride, it was nearly a mile in length. Which is a long coaster. Actually, the longest coaster in Europe.
In Europe, yes. Yes. I did like the April 1st tweet, by the way. We'll move on from that. I thought that was excellent. Did you get a response from Ford? Do we know? We're a little bit friends with Thorpe now, which is something which has come out of this. So yeah, we're not going to. At the end of the day, the big one has served us really well. I hope their ride serves them well. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the big one, you mentioned that it's what, 30 years old this year? Already 30 years old. How's
30 years young.
30 years young. Good point. He says wearing his Big Dipper 100 years. So you've got another 70 years of maintenance on it. Yeah, Andy. Sorry. But in terms of that sea air, that's a massive steel.
I mean, in logical circumstances, you wouldn't build a huge steel structure right next to the sea. But it's such a corrosive environment that you obviously have to. Well, you build it with that in mind, but then you obviously have the ongoing maintenance, and all the track work that we're doing is essentially to make sure that the ride's here for people to enjoy for another 30 years.
How much painting do you need to do?
It's the analogy is the Forth Bridge analogy. So I'm not sure I should say this, but when we do the walk, the big one, which is the thing where people pay to come and walk up to the top of this, and it's a really cool experience. But they always see at the top of the hill the bit that we don't paint very often. When you're sat in the train, because of the position of the train, you can't really see it. So it's not like what I would term as a priority. So I always have to kind of say to these groups of people, you get to see our sort of dirty secret.
What's the difference in terms of because you can put me right from the layman anarchy side of things, which is when it comes to wooden coasters, is that my understanding was, of course, that wooden coasters, if you paint them, of course, the wood can't breathe, and
there's different
there's theories.
Yeah, you got we have, depending on what paint product you use, there is paint that allows breathability.
Oh right, okay.
Of the structure.
So that's, we went through a period of not painting, and then there was obviously the paintwork that took place for turning the Nickelodeon streak orange. For Nickelodeon land, and then obviously last year the Big Dipper's birthday, we took the decision for that instance to repaint the ride, and as I say, things have moved on a lot, like the types of paints that you can use and so on. I also don't think people quite, when they did the Big Dipper, that actually involved a team of people on ropes.
Yes, it did.
So we took that decision because we did scaffold some of it, but when you start scaffolding others, scaffolding is hugely expensive, but also it stops you doing. So I mean, the infusion ride is right next to the Big Dipper, and we wanted to obviously keep that ride operating and open. And so scaffolding the Dipper would have problematic. So we took that approach, and so it was quite a. When you sort of stood in front of it, it's difficult to actually to sort of weigh up actually how long it took.
I mean, have I seen when the big one's been touched up, if you excuse the expression, that you normally have people dangling from ropes and stuff, like sailors.
Yeah, rope access is the specialist painters who...
Oh, it's not Andy then?
No, it's definitely not Andy. Andy might like to have a go. Maybe, I don't know. I would. But
I climbed up it enough.
Not for me. Thank you. No, you do get specialist abseilers who are also painters. This is when you're tackling the big one structure. If you were to lay all the structural steel end to end, I dread to think how far it would stretch. But to scaffold the whole of the big one, it's hugely costly. So we have specialist people who are able to dangle like Action Man safely off the structure and paint it at the same time.
You just kind of don't realise the size of stuff. So the onion or droplet, but I say it's an onion, off the top of the Big Dipper, we took down and put in the car park. And when you sort of stood below it with the sort of famous neon sign and everything, you think it's big, but you don't think it's that big. When I was stood right next to the car park, it's enormous. And when you think of that, well, actually, we've got to blast all of the 100 years of stuff off that, and then repaint it, and then use a crane to put it back up. And you suddenly realise actually the scale, and that's just one of a top of it.
Yeah. You don't realise. I mean, this is what's nice about this, is that you don't realise the amount of behind the scenes work. Everyone always thinks, oh yes, well, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and we say that generically about stuff. When you start going into detail, and you sit there thinking, as a day job, where do you start? I mean, let's go. The ghost train has had a bit of a time up over the winter, and a glow up. Sorry,
Not sure about
I'm learning a lot of these phrases here. So Pleasure Beach Resort, glow up, and the parks, whatever I want to call it. So there we go. I'm doing well. But the glow up, the ghost train.
Yes.
That is, effectively the world's first ghost train. It's got a lot of heritage to it. Where did you start?
I think it's weird when I look back. I don't know where we started really. We're thinking. I mean, there is a sort of plan which will happen over the next couple of years with the ghost train. But really, it's just is a traditional ghost train. But again, as Andy said earlier, we don't want to become a sort of living museum of the past. So we're just working in there. So people expect jump scares now, so we're just trying to deliver jump scares in the ghost train. And adding
my 5-year-old screams at you. You did exactly. He loved it for that. So well done. Yes, very good.
So there'll be more of that coming. And the good thing is, because all of that work was done in house, it sort of meant we could keep it under wraps until we opened it really, and also we could turn it around quite quickly. But also with the ghost train, we can work in it sort of in sections. So I'd say rather than it being a sort of a big project, it's going to happen over a few glow-ups over the coming winters. But I mean, the ghost train, doing that stuff, that's pure fun doing that. And we did work in the Alice ride, refurbishment work in there, historic painting. Again, that was a lot of fun. But the winter, I know everyone thinks a lot of work happens. It's particularly for our department is when I say hectic, it probably doesn't cover it. I mean,
how long is the winter effectively for you guys?
It's quite short here.
I mean, we have, because of the illuminations, extension, and so on. So we're open now up until the end of November in terms of weekends, and then there's still obviously you've got your panto going on, and we have a grotto going on, and we run the Alice ride for that, and so on. So the actual window of time is like 3 months, 2 months, 2.5 months. Which at the start of it, you always think, we've got loads of time, and then suddenly Christmas comes and goes, and then it's like,
The phrase you were looking for was excellent, Pat. Thank you very much. The one that keeps him busy from boxing down.
I think also, I remember as younger Adam. Oh God, I mourn for younger Adam. As an enthusiast, sort of the winter period always seemed really long. I think when you're sort of as a guest looking at it, you think, I wish it was shorter, and sometimes I think, I wish it was actually slightly longer because of the amount of work we have to do. I mean, we've got the entirety of the park. There's stuff on the rise, like ride vehicles come off. they get re-glassed, they get repainted, they get lacquered, they get sprayed on the park walls. We replace fences, render. It's just, and it's the entirety of the park. And we're also doing it in the period of the year where we have the harshest weather.
I was about to say, because actually a lot of, you walk around, and if you're looking at basic aesthetics, and I know full well that, you know, in Amanda's tenure, especially, a lot of the aesthetics have been focused on, but trying to do that in the winter months, because, you know, very few people go out in storm force gales that we get in the Irish Sea and say, you can't really go up and say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do some painting today, you know.
We have to just brace ourselves and put the big coat on and get on with it. And obviously, we work safely, but you have to kind of duck and dive with the weather. So you sort of run jobs concurrently, so you have indoor jobs, so you plan your outdoor jobs, and if you can't do one of those with the weather, you immediately jump on an indoor job. So we sort of, everyone's got two tasks running at the same time, so they've got something to fall back on.
Is it made more easy or more difficult? That's good grammar, isn't it? With the fact that one of the greatest things I find about Pleasure Beach is the constrained site where if you're riding something, it's ducking and diving between everything. It's like Splitter Junction. Does that make maintenance more difficult?
I don't know that it makes...
It
can do, but I actually think that's one of the things that makes Pleasure Beach what it is, because when, you know, particularly if you're here when the parks are lit up at night, and all the rides are going round, and there's something about it which is magical, and I mean it's difficult to put your finger on, but I'm not sure if we had 200-acre site whether it would be
the same atmosphere.
So I quite like that aspect of it, and that's, you know, that's been something that's carried on, you know, even like a relatively recent ride like Icon. But one of the great things about that is, it actually interacts with the Big Dipper, 100-year-old coaster, and you've got a state-of-the-art coaster going over the top of it, and so on. So yeah, no, I think that's a key component of what makes the atmosphere on this park so good.
I got to interview Katie Mellier a few years ago, who's a roller coaster fanatic, and she hadn't been to Pleasure Beach, and I challenged her on the fact that she needs to get here because there is no other park in the world where they just literally duck and let's be honest, it's been by necessity because you've got no more room, but the fact that they duck and dive between each other and one
makes them all more exciting. Yeah. I remember we were talking before the podcast about the big one. I remember watching the footers go in as well. And you just remember when you see it was announced that, you know, at the time the world's biggest roller coaster coming to Pleasure Beach, you'd think, where's that going? And you thought, oh, right, it's just going to go in and round. And I remember the log flume had to be altered. The structure of the big one itself was modified to fit in around.
Cut a hole in the Big Dipper.
It was just incredible. And also the same with Icon, you know, and we had some space, but it's just the interactions, you know, around past Steeplechase, over the area by Storm... Skyfall.
Yes.
Sorry, I was looking out the window and it was grey. I was thinking about storms.
Was it Storm Kathleen was doing, isn't it, or something like that?
But that, I just think you don't, you know, as Andy said, if we had like a 200-acre site and we elongated everything out, I just think we'd lose something, part of the magic. That I don't think we could quite write down what the magic of Pleasure Beach is, but that's definitely a contributing factor to it.
Let's talk about then the magic in terms of your personal connection with it. You know, I talk a lot on air about the fact that this place means a lot to me from a family point of view. You know, my little plaque is in the wall of names saying it's my second home since 1987, which is closer to the truth than I dare admit. In terms, Andy, of your favourite ride and what makes it special to you, especially bearing in mind, you know, he's at every park every week around the world. You know, he's barely here. I look at his Twitter.
No, I mean, well, things like favourite coasters, don't you find that it changes all the time?
I know.
You know what I mean, I've always had people who say, what are your top 3 coasters? And I do think, well, I think it's always influenced by what you've ridden recently, particularly if you've ridden something new. At Pleasure Beach, my favourite ride is actually Revolution, which everyone's always surprised about. Now, that's because I'm a Steely fan, and I don't know, there's something about it that I think for a ride, I mean, that ride is it was the first looping coaster in Europe. It's got an amazingly small footprint, which works so well for this park for the reasons that we said before. I like the fact that you have to make some effort. Get up to it. But the key thing about it is actually it's a really good ride. It's a really punchy little ride. And
it is the ride that I've discovered now, approaching 45. Yeah, I'm more younger me, like you, more younger you. I went on Revolution last year, and I've almost told myself that maybe my time has come to give up on the Revolution because it
Never.
Well, of course I'll go on it again. But you sit there going, actually, I've suddenly realised the intensity of it, and I don't feel that kind of intensity on the big one. I don't feel that kind of intensity on. That's quite.
Before I worked here, I when I was a 100% geek, I came here on a trip.
How are you 19?
I know.
Yeah.
And anyway, they had that particular trip had an ERT, which is exclusive rides, and which we still do for clubs now on the big one and the Revolution. I think it was pouring with rain. Anyway, everyone obviously went on the big one, and I ended up riding in the front seat of the Revolution 17 times in a row without leaving the train. And now when I think about that, so what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Did you do that now?
I think I probably could have pushed.
Well, it's like when you look at the world record-breaking attempts and all the big dippers and the roller coasters and the big one and everything else like this, and you sit there going, actually, I enjoy this, but there is an element that I go to theme parks to ride on roller coasters to feel a little bit beaten up by the end of the day. I want the exhilaration. I want everything. You sit there going, how do these people do it? You know, so 17 times.
I'm quite proud of that now, I think.
Yeah, that's a good thing. You know what you need to do? Adam, you need a plaque. We need a blue plaque on there saying you've done it. You know.
I rode 17 times in a row.
So go on then, Adam, what's your favourite aspect of the park?
Same as Andy, my favourites change, I think, depending on my mood. Well, sometimes. At the minute, if you're asking me right now, I'm not going to say, is it my favourite? A standout one for me that I find really unique is steeplechase, because I still feel quite. You're in that elevated position on a horse, and actually I'm quite scared of horses, so that probably adds to it a bit.
So it's not the ride or the elevated position; it's the horse.
There's part of it. It's all of it.
Oh,
elevated position. It's the horse, and I just find it's got a sort of a very different feel to any other coaster. I know it's not. It's not record-breaking in terms of speed, height, or anything like that, but it is quite fun, but also is a little bit scary. It's the same way I feel about horses. I'm sure they're fun, but I also think they're really scary. But for me, I couldn't do what Andy did 17 times on the Revolution. I think generally now I have to do, I could do Icon twice, and then I'd say, oh, let's go for a ride on the Pleasure Beach Express while I recenter and resettle.
Bearing in mind that he's obviously revealed this slight apprehension when it comes to horses, is future creative projects going to have the steeplechase riding rockets? Is the Grand National going to get renamed to something that's on your card that's only got less of a horsey thing?
I'm definitely not anti-horse.
No, I mean, my favourites, I have to say, the park. I do like the older rides, and I think that's a nostalgia thing. I love the Grand National for the second bunny hop that they have at the bottom of the dips. You don't really get on the other ones. But I've always loved rides that give you the weightless thing, that negative G where your stomach gets lifted up. The Wild Mouse used to have that, Grand National has it, and I'm going to be unpopular here, I've never liked the big one because its hills don't have that parabola. They don't give you that weightless feeling, whereas Icon, I've always felt if you're on the back seat when you go over that first hill, that's incredible. That feeling of being lifted out of the seat.
It is a really great player. But it's interesting with the big ones. I find it. I mean, when I go on the big one, it doesn't have the same type of drops as Icon at all. But I find it really exhilarating. It's like this sort of wonderful high speed coaster train in the sky. And especially at night.
And the first drop gets me every time. Still, I think.
Yes.
It's just in the back seat.
Oh,
Just don't look for the bits that you don't want anyone to look at.
No. Do you know, I think what you were saying then about, we were talking about this before, in terms of horses. I think we've got a claim for the most number of carousel horses in the world in one park. I mean, if you include, because if you think we've got the Derby races, we've got low, like 50 horses or whatever. We've got a smaller carousel. We've got a regular carousel as well. Plus, if you count all the horses on the steeplechase, which I would, then I actually think we.
And don't forget the midway game or whatever it is. That's what's it called?
Kentucky Derby.
Kentucky Derby. Well, I'd throw those in.
No, you can't.
Well, I'd throw them in. They're just a slightly smaller scale.
So sorry, Adam.
No, actually, we do have a heck of a lot of horses.
You put him into therapy for 6 months now. You put that. Nay. I mean, I suppose actually we should point out we should have been wearing black armbands. You mentioned the Pleasure Beach Express, of course. Is it an elephant or is it a mammoth that's finally gone? That's this year. Bless it. So
yes.
Rest in peace.
We are all the models on the Pleasure Beach Express are currently going through a rolling refurbishment.
Oh, excellent.
Which again we're doing in house. So.
I noticed the soundtrack appeared last year.
Yes,
last year,
it did.
which was nice.
Yes,
Yeah,
it did.
But the big deal I had with my dad, who used to bring me as a kid here, was that when he got too old for roller coasters, that we would all have to take time out when we wanted to go on the roller coasters in order to take him on his white knuckle ride of the Pleasure Beach Express. So that is the annual trip around of just taking it easy. So yes, I'm a big fan of the Pleasure
We
Beach
love
Express.
Pleasure Beach Express.
And actually, from a heritage point of view, I'm going to get my railway nutter hat on here. The locomotives themselves, I mean, they're what, 90 years old now?
30, yeah. So,
Yeah. Both of you have looked at me as if, oh, crikey. He's talking railways, shut it off.
How nice for you.
Yeah, how nice. Oh dear, I'm going to send you a Christmas card with railway trains on them specially now. In terms of... a horse driving a train, there we go, that's even better.
I'm okay with pictures often, strangely.
Are you?
Yes.
How about fluffy teddies, I'm thinking here.
They'd be okay.
Oh, that's all right, there we go.
Living, breathing thing. They're fine as well, as long as I'm more than a foot away.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of sending you a real horse.
Oh, that's all right.
I'm not going that far.
Panic over.
Let's talk the future now. Now, I know for well that I'm going to tread onto dodgy ground here because your lips are going to be sealed. We mentioned earlier on, theme parks, amusement parks, they don't stand still, as you said, Disney said, what was it? It was always be in a state of becoming, I think was his phrase.
Well, that was Epcot.
That was Epcot, wasn't it?
That's one of my favourites.
Yes. Yeah. Disneyland will never be finished, that was it. Well, it's still Imagination or something like that, yes. And the other plethora of quotes that they use from. I stupidly, in my office, when I got promoted, I stuck a Walt Disney quote on the wall that says the way to get things, it's something like the way to get things doing is to stop talking and start doing. And in a radio station, I was pointed out that that's not the best thing.
No, it's really not.
It's still there, but it wasn't my best, I'm not going to lie. But in terms of the future, yeah, you're not going to stand still. Now, that this year, we've had the announcement that the Grand Prix is closing. I'm going to put this to Andy. Let's drop him. Now I'm expecting the coffee. Yeah, you have a sip of coffee. The company line. It's a realistic proposition. That in order to continue going forward, older eyes will go.
You said it yourself. We are a landlocked site, and we have to be quite imaginative in what we do. And the Grand Prix happens to take up a fair amount of space, and everything has its time. And so the Grand Prix, we understand that for hundreds and hundreds of people, it's the first time they ever got to drive a car, and so we understand its appeal. But then at the same time, it's reached the end of its time with us, and we're quite excited about looking at what we're going to put where it is.
I can tell my face. I'm not going to get any more. In terms of that, though, because I would have always thought, once again, layman point of view, that let's say Infusion, which was kind of more than I'd say off-the-shelf design.
Yeah. Although I always say, when people say that, and it's true, it's a cookie-cutter coaster. There's a lot of those coasters all over the world. But the way that it's presented at Pleasure Beach is the thing that makes it into something that isn't just a cookie-cutter. cutter ride in the, over water, the sheep dip aspect, the fountains aspect, all of that stuff. And that just looks really, really pretty.
Oh, it's amazingly good looking. In terms of the cost of putting in new rides, I would imagine that something like Icon, which has to be custom designed to fit around everything, is more of a challenge.
Icon at the time, this is in 2018 money, was an investment of over 16 million. So these rides are, because they're not cheap.
So that's central plot. You've got the Grand Prix, you've got the Thompson Carousel, war horses. You've got the Little Alpine Rally, you've got the Avalanche there as well, Bradley Bella's Learning Garden, and it goes all the way up to, the Eddie Stobart ride and things like that. There's putting in there is going to be a creative challenge, isn't it?
Well, it's the same as in some ways. We are challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
Same as Icon was in terms of a challenging sites. When you could use that example with Icon. We had bumper boats. We had, for some time we had the Spin Doctor. The Tom Sawyer's Bridge. All of that stuff going across to the area where
I'm old enough to remember the Tom Sawyer ride, So am I. Yes, when you used to sit in what is now coasters, and you used to see the Tom Sawyer ride going past with that huge dinosaur head that used to go underwater and then lift up as the boats went past. Yeah,
it seems to have been a very long ride as well.
Yes, you got value for money on that one.
Yes.
So obviously challenges come in there. What's the sort of rotation in terms of new rides? I might be almost dropping you into a bloody pay grade as well. How often, within the industry do you feel that there has to be churn, really? Or is it just, is a feeling?
Necessarily
fixed. Yeah, there is an expectation from guests that they obviously like to see something new, and then you obviously have to balance that against the huge investment that these things cost. And so but then I think that's also tempered by things like the work that we've talked about that we did on Valhalla, and even actually down to like the work you talked about on the Ghost Train. I think if you've got a balance of all of those threads going through, then the sort of big hitter things, which you're not going to see every year because it's just not
unrealistic.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of when they do come along, I think people appreciate them, but obviously the waiting for those is kind of offset by all the other things that you've got going.
I suppose the other point, Adam, is that you could keep on going and putting brand new rides in, but if you don't maintain the other ones, there's not much point having a park that you've got a nice new sparkling ride in, but the rest of the park is falling to pieces.
Yes, there's a new ride, such as a coaster, for example, they're a huge investment, but also the upkeep of the ones we've already got, it's also a lot of money, and we have to make sure we don't want to ever put in new rides and then forget about the rides we've already got. It's really important to us that we look after everything we've got. And I think with obviously Andy and I both coming from enthusiast background, obviously it's lovely to dream in coaster, as you might say.
Do you have a copy of Planet Coaster or whatever it's called on your work PC? Do you occasionally just buy yourself half an hour?
Someone bought me it for Christmas. I really, really struggled a bit with it. It's so complicated.
Do you know what's worse? Once again, when I'm left to do the parenting and the wife is out, my youngest insists, because of course people have built Pleasure Beach on Planet Coaster, and you can then sit on the rides and go around them. So we've been around every ride on this blooming park on Planet Coaster. So there we go. Anyway, if you've not got your work PC yet, I
do have Planet Coaster on my home computer, and I don't think I've opened it for ages. The last time I opened it, I remember it was the same in the days of the very first Roller Coaster Tycoon, which by comparison, was awful but brilliant at the time. A whole day can just vanish. I don't know if that's just me, but sort of open it for, just for...
Was it Boxing Day?
No, it wasn't Boxing Day, actually. But I've had it before when you opened it, and, I think, I'll just spend an hour, and then suddenly it's... a whole day has passed, and you think, oh my world, I have to do real world.
Roller Coaster Tycoon, I used to build the staff parking areas. So, it's probably a good thing that I don't.
Do you know what? I think that after this podcast, the next thing we should do in about a year's time is the three of us get together and we'll just do a YouTube video of the three of us building a park on Planet Coaster and just see who builds what. I'll be painting everything and putting signs up. Andy will be building all the staff amenities, and you can come up with the creative side. How's that?
That works for me.
works for me.
And we don't have to worry about money. We don't have to think about budgets in terms of in the software.
And we won't build it near the sea, so we don't have to bother with the sea conditions and stuff like that. Once again, you might tell me to shut up here. What the infamous myth, and this is going back many, many years, of the infamous bigger one. You know the one that everyone was talking about that was going to shoot out to sea along a pier and all this kind of stuff. Was that ever realistic? I mean,
it was of its time.
Yeah.
Because you got to, I mean, this is 20 years ago or whatever. And there was, this is the era of those rocket coasters that were doing 400 feet and so on. But you can still ride out anywhere. Obviously, one of them in a new form. Actually, I rode Kinder Car the first time a couple of years ago.
Did you enjoy?
Well, no, the first time I went to ride it was where it was its opening year. So I'm actually not sure. Like 2005, something like that.
Does it still hold the record?
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, for now. And
Thought Park will get it.
no, that is a 600-foot thing being Six Flags Kadir, isn't it? And so I mean, everyone's excited to see what that's. So anyway, so I went to ride Kinder Car its opening year, and it was shut. And it took me 20 years. So I went back like 2 years ago, and it was actually open, and I finally went on it. But what was weird about it was
Did you tweet about it?
I probably
he would. He would have done.
I did, but so actually, geekily, I could claim now that I've been on the tallest coaster in the world, and I've also happened to have been on the fastest coaster because I've been on the one at Ferrari Land.
Oh wow!
Ferrari World, whatever.
Definitely need goggles for that.
Yeah, in the front seat you do because of the sand and so on. Anyway, so. But what was weird about it was that I don't know with these kind of rides, and I think it would be different here because it didn't feel like it was 456 feet, and I don't know whether it was because of the surrounding, because it's like countryside around the Six Flags. It's a great adventure. And I also think once you get over 200 feet, it actually doesn't make that much difference. It's quite difficult to notice that it was more. If you said to me it was more than twice the height of the big one or whatever, then when you went on it didn't feel that way. And I think that's part of our situation. So, and to answer your question in a roundabout way, it was looked at in some way.
Yeah.
But the thing about the prom with the circles on the prom is a myth and a happy coincidence.
Yes. Well, if you've not found that, just go search on YouTube. You'll be able to see all the wonderful stories about that. I say wonderful in inverted commas.
Andy has just told every enthusiast that Father Christmas does not exist.
Boxing Day.
Happy Boxing Day. Maybe that's why he's always depressed on Boxing Day, thinking of ideas. Because it was a roller coaster war sort of time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the 90s, because if it wasn't going tall or fast, it was doing something different. Because of course we all know Nemesis was very is of a similar age to the big one and stuff like that.
The year of the roller coaster, wasn't it?
Yeah.
94 was the big one. Nemesis, Shockwave, all of that happened in 1 year.
And Shockwave, of course, no longer a stand-up. It's just a.
But that's fine because. I've been on Rougarou at Cedar Point. It used to be a stand-up, and it's now a floorless coaster. And I went on that last year. I've been on it before and after. And do you know what? It's still a great ride.
Yeah. Do you know what? One of my favourite rides outside the UK is Shambhala at Port Aventura, yeah. And I'm purposely currently on a diet due to the fact that I think the restraints only just fitted around my hips last time, and I'm determined to go back on it again. And
clamshell.
I mean, it's a great ride. It's a great hyper coaster, but yeah, just touch on this for a moment. Restraints have got they've changed over recent years. That you used to feel that you were really boxed in, and now
much more. Well, I think that's deliberate. I mean, if you look at the style of the restraint on Icon, it's actually pretty minimal, and then you're actually in that slightly elevated position. As well, my feet don't touch them.
No,
have you done Enzo? Have you tried Enzo on the back of Icon, the spinning seats?
I haven't.
No.
No, it's a waltzer on a roller coaster.
Thank you.
I can't do waltzers. I can't spin.
Oh, no, I did a waltzer last year to keep my son happy on a travelling fun fair, and I just came off and collapsed on the floor. My wife thought it was very funny, and I wasn't so keen.
I've been on.
17 times in a row.
17 times. No.
When they'd finished commissioning it and we were testing it, we did have to ride it quite a lot.
Have to. Did you hear that?
Yes,
Andy
had to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Contracted.
Yes.
No, I've always been. I think that's one of the. Well, water wouldn't bother me. So
No.
I could eat donuts and go to water. That'd be fine.
Right, okay. Once again, that's the next video challenge. We will feed him donuts with a waltzer. There we go. Have any of the peers got waltzers?
I think they still have.
Yeah, I think, okay, next year we'll do that.
Yeah, just don't ask me to do it, as you know I'm famous for
No, I'm
falling
not.
over on stage.
I need you to film it. That's all right. You have a role.
I can film and hold the donuts.
So,
eat the donuts.
eat the donuts. Yeah, we'll eat the donuts.
Well, actually, what was weird about Enzo is that I distinctly remember because we'd ridden Icon such a lot because we ride it as part of a job.
Yeah.
And the first time we went on it, and suddenly we were going sideways down one of the launches, and it was just really, really weird because you're so familiar with the ride, and for it to be the same ride but in a completely different way. And I think we spent like at least half the ride going backwards, and it was just, for me, it was just odd. I mean, I've got used to it now, but
I've done it. I've done it once, and I was talked into it by a stranger who is notable, and who took me on it last year. And I'm very firmly in your camp now.
I used to be able to spin round and round, but I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine with anything as long as I'm not spinning.
Yeah, me too on that one. So Andy, we'll
disappointed in myself if I'm honest.
But we have set up that challenge now for next year. Don't worry.
Yeah,
so Andy's going to do waltzes after about the donuts, so that's okay. Pleasure Beach fresh donuts, of course. You know.
Enzo after donuts.
Oh yeah,
that's fine.
So to finish up, guys, because this has been great fun having a bit of a chin-wag and a chat about behind the scenes, and more to the point about the people behind the scenes. Because I think a lot of times people who are enthusiasts for theme parks begin to talk about theme parks as if they are the person, you know, as if the theme park itself is a person, or the theme park itself has an identity, forgetting that it's actually the people behind the scenes that make a theme park come alive. But I mean, I can imagine from your perspective, you're both, you know, very passionate people, but the teams that work with you, it must be a labour of love generally to keep this place running.
I mean, yes, we don't. I can't say any of us do, you know, work 9 to 5 hours. And that's not out of, you know, sufferance or anything. You just, at the time you need to do it, you're just out of the love. You just do what you need to do to get the job done. And for a lot of people, it's, you know, there's days when it's really, I won't lie, there are days when it's really challenging. In the winter period is particularly tough. But I think everyone perseveres out of the sort of love and passion for the industry and for Pleasure Beach itself, and it really does push you at times. And there's other days when it's, you know, it's absolutely joyous. I don't want to make it sound like we have days where, you know, I don't want to work here. I always absolutely do, but you know, I think your love for the industry is what pulls you through.
And it's the constant invites of Andy to join him on these global trips, obviously.
Obviously, not one, Alex, not one.
For you, Andy, I mean, I joke about your Twitter feed, but it does come across as someone who has a great passion for the industry.
I like going to. If I go on holiday, I don't think I could go on a regular type of holiday. I wouldn't just. I'd be bored. Sit back.
In fairness, I should point out here that I'm not exactly. I'm standing in a glass house throwing stones here because I'm on a family holiday, and my wife has already pointed out, "You're going off to talk about roller coasters." Like, yes, I am. So I'm equally in your glass house here, you know, throwing stones. So, but for you, you know, that coming to work here, it must be, you know, if you compare it to, well, I could be either 9 to 5 in a bank, or I could be.
I don't think I could do those kind of. It's weird because in the winter my job changes into a more of a desk job, and it's fine because it's for a short period of the year. But I like to be. I think if you're in an amusement, or if you're helping to operate an amusement park, you have to be out in the amusement park, and that's how you see it. That's how, you know, I think most of the staff know my name, which I like, and so I hope that they can approach me and all of that kind of stuff. And
do you have to walk around? Does he walk around with the infamous old-fashioned style of clipboard, pointing out things that are wrong and things like that?
It's more now. I'm obsessed with the little step counter. We had a little we've obviously had an Easter Saturday recently. I think I did 30,000 steps on that day, and now it's kind of set the precedent.
Andy's always walking the beat.
Oh,
He does have a clipboard, but you don't often take that out.
Try not to. We're modern now. A lot of stuff is done on your phone.
Oh, right, but we'll let him off on that one.
Instead, but
when you say a step counter, by the way, is there a challenge? Is there like a step?
We have a little. At the end of the day, we have a little comparison. Who's walked the most? But no, I mean, it's a privilege to be able to come and work in a park. And I can say I've worked. This is my 10th season. I've actually worked in other parks before I worked here and so on. And I'm really, really lucky to be able to do that, and to be able to, if I want to go and sit on a roller coaster in 5 minutes, I can do. That is a real privilege, and as an enthusiast, there is a big difference between, as Adam says, the amount of work that goes into it, which is unseen. To make this stuff happen involves such a huge amount of people and teams to get everything to come together to deliver ultimately for the guest, and so to be a small part in that is a huge privilege, and so I love it.
And I've always said as well that to keep any given theme park, for that matter, or amusement park, looking the same, that takes a lot of work. For it just to appear the same the next season, that on its own is a lot of work.
Yeah.
For it to then have moved on, that's even more work again.
And as you say, the keeping it looking the same, maintenance, one of the most important things that any business or any organisation can do, especially maintenance of infrastructure. People don't normally notice that, and that's how it should be, surely.
It's absolutely how it should be. Of course it is. You don't want people, and also you don't want to go around pointing out to people that, we've replaced all that steelwork that you can't see.
Yeah.
They don't need to know that. But, we do. Andy walks the beat more than anyone here. I will go out on park before it's open, or sometimes during the days. You have to see things from a guest perspective, and like we've done some refurbishment work in Impossible, which just opened in time for Easter, and you go and walk it and see it through a guest's eyes, and that kind of informs you of where you should be spending a bit of time and putting a bit of love into things as well on the park. And sometimes it's nice to get on the park and observe how people are reacting to something, how they're interacting with stuff. It's nice to sort of almost be a fly on the wall.
Can you occasionally get into the like a bit of a bubble where you thought something is, that's really, really brilliant, and then you see a guest reaction and think, oh, actually, that's possibly not being perceived as I thought. We might tweak that to change it. Yeah?
I mean, you should. I think you always need to be open to that anyway, that you think, okay, it's sort of on paper and in concept something works, and then actually when you see the guests interacting with it, you think, okay, slightly different, and it just leads to you adjusting it. But I think you should always be open to that, because I think the expectation of, let's say, people going on a ghost train now is different to what it would have been all those years ago. I think, they've changed from being a sort of scenic, sort of funny bones, rides into, I think people do want to be made to jump, and to be a bit more sophisticated. Easy for me to say. To be a bit more sophisticated about how you achieve that.
There you go. I'm going to drop a minute. I can tell you, glare at me here on a podcast about. I still love skeletons on bikes.
No, they are still there. They're cycling away.
Actually,
we should try and do always work out how far they've travelled.
Oh, that would be good.
That would be nice.
And he's got nothing better to do all week.
He'll sit on one of the bikes.
I was in the ghost train.
And I was in the ghost train for Journey to Hell.
They put this screen. It was a jump scare.
It was a jump scare. I just remember we were.
Especially if you know Andy, I can imagine that's quite terrifying. What's that?
Why is Andy there?
We
did when we were looking at Journey to Hell last year, we did with the Ghost Train. We did an overlay called Vault of Shadows, and remember writing this little treatment for it, and it got to the end, and I don't know why it felt really right that Andy should be at the end. In my head, it was like
when you said you're not sure and you felt it was right that Andy was there, not anybody, but Andy.
Oh no, it was Andy. It was only Andy. I
And-
remember I typed it, and I think I immediately printed it and took it into Andy. I said, Andy.
And I was like,
what did you put before the words off?
Is the idea was it sort of was based upon people saying in the ghost train it's haunted, and staff members have reported things happening in there. And the idea was that Andy was very much it's nonsense, absolute nonsense. So I thought it would be funny at the end if Andy was the one to deliver the final scare. I really liked it.
How many hours did you leave him locked in there for?
He was digitally recreated.
Oh, that's all right then. I thought you genuinely left him in there.
No. He was so Andy could be out on park and also scaring every car on the ghost train.
I have to say, rounding this up, I've learned quite a lot from this podcast, aside from your love of the equine industry, Adam, but also that when it comes to putting people in slightly either humiliating or amusing positions, it always seems to fall to Andy. So basically, Enzo with after bags of donuts, Walter's bags of donuts, end of ghost train.
I'll be buying you a horse.
My Little Pony doesn't work, thank you.
Thanks, guys, and maybe we'll catch up again at some point in the future for, shall we say, some more fun, or that might possibly include donuts.
Possibly. And please ignore the penguin and the rooster. Thank you.